Welcome to our deep dive into Stillness Speaks by Eckhart Tolle.
Oh,
You might be familiar with him.
sure.
He's kind of a big deal in the world of mindfulness and spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And this book, it's not like a typical read.
All right.
It's more like a collection of short, powerful insights.
Okay.
Little bursts of wisdom
Yeah.
meant to make you stop and think.
You could almost compare it to those ancient sutras,
Yeah.
or even some of the sayings of Jesus.
Okay.
Short, pithy,
Mm-hmm.
and designed to spark a shift in perspective
Right.
rather than lay out a complex argument.
Exactly. So in this deep dive, we'll be exploring Tolle's ideas about the power of stillness.
Okay.
Not just the quiet kind,
Right.
but the inner kind.
Mm-hmm.
The kind that helps us find peace
Yeah.
within ourselves and navigate the chaos of the world around us.
Absolutely.
Ready to get started.
I think a great place to begin is with the first chapter,
Okay.
Silence and Stillness,
Mm-hmm.
where Tolle throws down a challenge right from the start.
Okay.
Listen to silence.
Okay, but isn't that what we're doing right now when there's no one talking? What does he mean by that?
He's pointing to something deeper than just the absence of sound.
Okay.
It's about becoming aware of the space
Right.
in which sounds exist, that
Mhm.
underlying stillness that's always present,
Right.
even amidst the noise.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can hear the quietest sound
Right.
when everything else is silent.
Yeah.
It's about accessing that inner silence.
Interesting. It's like he's saying we need to tune in to a different frequency,
Yes.
one that's always there but often gets drowned out. And
Yeah.
get this.
Okay.
He even suggests trying this while observing something in nature.
Sure.
Like a tree.
What's fascinating of that is how nature embodies stillness so effortlessly.
Right.
Think about it.
Okay.
A tree doesn't have to try to be still.
Mm-hmm.
It just is.
Right.
And by observing that natural stillness,
Yeah.
we can start to reconnect with it within ourselves.
So if you're feeling overwhelmed by the noise of your own thoughts
Yeah.
or the world around you,
Right.
maybe the key is to step outside
Okay.
and just be present with a tree for a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Who knew trees could be such wise teachers?
Right. And this idea of getting beyond the noise of our thoughts leads us perfectly into chapter 2,
Okay.
Beyond the Thinking Mind,
Oh.
where Tolle really shakes things up.
I think we all know what it's like to get lost in our thoughts.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it feels like our minds are running a marathon we never signed up for.
Right.
But Tolle isn't saying thinking is bad, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
He's acknowledging that thinking is a valuable tool,
Mm-hmm.
but he's also pointing out that there's a whole dimension of consciousness
Right.
beyond thinking
Okay.
that most people completely miss.
Right.
He calls it presence or awareness.
Okay.
It's that state of simply being
Yeah.
without all the mental chatter.
Okay, I'm starting to see where he's going with this.
Okay.
So it's not about stopping our thoughts altogether,
Yeah.
which honestly sounds impossible,
Yeah.
but about becoming aware of them,
Right.
almost like stepping back and observing them
Right.
without getting swept away.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
It's about recognizing that we are not our thoughts.
Okay.
And Tolle even suggests a simple but powerful practice.
Okay.
Try not taking your thoughts too seriously.
Hmm.
Don't believe every little story your mind comes up with.
But isn't that easier said than done?
Sure.
Our thoughts can feel so real and important in the moment.
Absolutely. But that's where practice comes in.
Okay.
When you start to observe your thoughts,
Yeah.
you'll notice how often they're repetitive,
Mm-hmm.
even nonsensical.
Right.
Like how many times have you replayed that awkward conversation from last week
Oh, all the time.
or worried about something that hasn't even happened yet?
Right.
Tolle would probably say that's the ego at work, right?
Yeah, that's what chapter 3, the egoic self, dives into.
Okay.
So let's unpack that a bit.
Sure.
What exactly is the ego?
Well, think of the ego as that part of you
Okay.
that's constantly seeking validation,
Mm-hmm.
that wants to feel important and in control.
Right.
It's the voice in your head that's always comparing,
Yeah.
judging,
Right.
trying to figure out where you stand in the world.
Okay.
And it loves to use your thoughts to create a sense of identity, a
Right.
story about who you are.
So it's like our thoughts become building blocks for this ego-created self-image.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the tricky thing is,
Okay.
we often mistake that self-image for who we really are.
Right.
Tolle would say that the I we usually refer to
Mm-hmm.
is just a collection of thoughts,
Right.
beliefs,
Okay.
and stories.
Mm-hmm.
It's fleeting,
Well,
constantly changing like a wave on the ocean.
wait, if our I is constantly changing, who is it that's observing that change?
That's exactly the question Tolle wants us to ask.
Right.
It's a pointer to something deeper within us, something beyond the ego,
Right.
something that's constant and unchanging.
Okay.
He calls it our being, our true nature.
So if the ego is all about our fleeting self-image,
Right.
being is about our true essence.
Yes.
The part of us that's beyond thought and identification.
Precisely.
Okay.
And recognizing this distinction is crucial because the ego is always seeking, always trying to add more to itself to feel complete.
Right.
It's never satisfied,
Yeah.
always striving for the next thing.
Which explains why we're constantly focused on the future.
Exactly.
Always chasing after that next goal, that next achievement, thinking it will finally make us happy.
Right.
But if I'm hearing you right,
Yeah.
true happiness isn't found in those external things.
Exactly.
It's about connecting with our being.
That's one of Tolle's core messages.
Okay.
He's saying that the key to lasting peace and fulfillment
Yeah.
isn't about accumulating more stuff
Right.
or achieving more goals. It's about finding that stillness within,
Okay.
that connection to our true nature.
And that, my friend, brings us to one of Tolle's most famous concepts. The power of the now.
Yes.
Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into Stillness Speaks, where we'll explore exactly what that means.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Eckhart Tolle's Stillness Speaks. We're about to explore one of his most profound and honestly sometimes mind-bending concepts,
Okay.
the power of the now.
It's a concept that has the power to completely transform your experience of life.
Right.
But it can also be a bit tricky to wrap your head around at first.
I think a lot of us have heard the phrase be present thrown around, but what does it really mean to live in the now? Isn't that just like common sense?
It might seem like common sense.
Yeah.
But if you pay attention to your own mind,
Right.
you'll notice how rarely we're actually present. Our thoughts are constantly pulling us into the past.
Yeah.
Or projecting us into the future.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
Sure.
I'm always either replaying conversations in my head or worrying about what's going to happen next. So how do we break free from that cycle?
Well, Tolle would say the first step is simply becoming aware of it.
Okay.
Notice how often your mind wanders away from this present moment. Don't judge yourself for it.
Right.
Just observe it.
So it's about catching ourselves in the act of mind wandering
Yeah.
and gently bringing our attention back to the present.
Exactly. And a
Wow.
great way to do that is by focusing on your senses.
Okay.
What do you see, hear, smell, taste, and feel right now?
Yeah.
Bringing your attention to your physical sensations can help ground you in the present moment.
It's like hitting the pause button on all the mental chatter
Yeah.
and tuning in to what's actually happening in our bodies and in our surroundings.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And here's the thing.
Okay.
Tolle isn't just saying this is a nice way to relax or de-stress.
Right.
He's saying that the present moment is the only moment we ever truly have.
Okay.
The past is gone,
Right.
and the future is just a projection of our thoughts.
So if I'm understanding correctly, he's saying that life is a series of now moments strung together.
Yes.
And if we're not present for those moments, we're missing out on the whole point of being alive.
That's the essence of it. And Tolle makes this provocative statement in chapter 4.
Okay.
The present moment is the only place where life exists.
Okay.
It's like we're so busy focusing on getting somewhere else that we forget to enjoy the journey.
It's like that saying, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
Exactly. We get so caught up in our plans, our goals, our worries,
Yeah.
that we miss the beauty and the wonder that's unfolding right here, right now.
But isn't some level of planning for the future necessary?
Of course.
Okay.
Tolle isn't advocating for reckless abandon
Right.
or ignoring practical responsibilities. He's simply pointing out that we have a choice.
Okay.
We can approach the future with anxiety and fear,
Right.
or we could approach it from a place of presence and awareness.
So instead of stressing about what might happen tomorrow, we can focus on doing what we can today
Right.
in this moment
Yeah.
and trust that things will unfold as they should.
That's the idea. And here's another fascinating point Tolle makes.
Okay.
He suggests making the now your friend.
Okay. I'm not sure I've ever thought about time as a friend. Usually it feels more like an enemy always ticking away, reminding me of all the things I haven't done yet.
I think a lot of us can relate to that.
Yeah.
But what if, instead of resisting the present moment,
Yeah.
we embraced it?
Yeah.
What if we welcomed it with open arms?
It sounds radical,
Yeah.
but I can see how it would be incredibly liberating to stop fighting against time
Right.
and just surrender to the flow of life.
And that's a great segue into one of Tolle's other key concepts.
Okay.
The power of surrender. He dedicates a whole chapter to it.
Okay.
And it's closely tied to the idea of living in the now.
So what does surrender look like in practice?
Well,
Does it mean giving up on our goals and dreams and just letting life happen to us?
that's a common misconception. But surrender isn't about passivity or resignation.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that there's a wisdom that's bigger than our limited minds.
Mm-hmm.
A flow to life that we can't always control.
So it's more about letting go of our need to control everything.
Yes.
And trusting that there's a bigger picture unfolding, even if we can't always see it.
You got it. It's about shifting from no to yes,
Uh-huh.
from resistance to acceptance.
Right.
And Tolle would say that true surrender is only possible in the present moment.
Okay.
We can't surrender to the past because it's already gone,
Right.
and we can't surrender to the future because it hasn't arrived yet.
It's like we're finally laying down the burden of all the what ifs and should haves and just allowing ourselves to be here now.
And in that space of surrender, a profound peace emerges because we're no longer fighting against reality.
Right, yeah.
We're flowing with it.
It reminds me of that beautiful quote from chapter 6. Leave life alone. Let it be.
Such a powerful reminder, isn't it?
Right.
We spend so much energy trying to force life
Yeah.
to fit into our narrow little boxes,
Right.
when all we really need to do is open up and let it be what it is.
Okay, but let's be honest.
Yeah.
That's easier said than done.
Right.
Life isn't always rainbows and butterflies.
Yeah.
What about when we're facing challenges or experiencing pain?
Mm-hmm.
Does Tolle have anything to say about that?
He does.
Yeah.
And you might be surprised by his perspective.
Okay.
He actually suggests that suffering can be a catalyst for awakening.
Mm.
He devotes chapter 10 to this idea.
Okay.
And it's one of the most thought-provoking sections of the book.
Okay. I'm intrigued, but also a little apprehensive.
Sure.
How can suffering possibly be a good thing?
Well, Tolle makes this fascinating distinction.
Okay.
He says that suffering is necessary
Okay.
until we realize it's unnecessary.
Okay. Unpack that for us. What does he mean by that?
It's like this.
Okay.
We all experience pain and suffering in life.
Right.
It's part of the human condition.
Yeah.
But we often add unnecessary layers of suffering on top of that
Okay.
by resisting it,
Okay.
by fighting against it,
Mm-hmm.
by getting caught up in the stories our minds create around it.
So it's not the pain itself that's the problem.
Right.
It's our reaction to it.
Exactly. We become the suffering self,
Okay.
the victim of our circumstances.
Right.
And Tolle suggests that the key to breaking free from this cycle of suffering is through acceptance.
Okay, but how can we possibly accept something that's causing us pain? It feels counterintuitive.
It might feel counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but it's incredibly powerful.
Okay.
Because when we resist pain, we actually amplify it.
Okay.
We give it more power over us.
Right.
But when we accept it,
Yeah.
when we allow ourselves to feel it fully without judgment, something amazing happens.
Okay.
It begins to lose its grip.
So instead of pushing away the pain,
Yeah.
we're leaning into it.
Yes. And Tolle would say that this doesn't mean we enjoy the pain
Right.
or pretend it's not there.
Yeah.
It's about acknowledging it, allowing it to be present,
Mm.
and observing it without getting lost in the story our minds create around it.
It's like we're creating space for the pain to move through us rather than trying to trap it inside.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And here's another key point.
Okay.
Tolle emphasizes that true unhappiness needs a mind-made me with a story.
Okay.
It needs the past and the future.
So if we can remove the story, the mental drama, we can experience the pain without all the added suffering.
Precisely. You might still feel the raw sensation of the pain,
Okay.
but it won't have the same power over you. It won't define you.
This is making me think about all those times I've gotten caught up in negative self-talk,
Yeah.
replaying past mistakes or worrying about future scenarios.
Right.
I was essentially creating my own suffering.
And how many of us do that on a daily basis?
Right.
We tell ourselves stories like, what a miserable day.
Right.
He shouldn't have said that, or
Mhm.
she let me down. These are all mind-made stories
Yep.
designed to enhance our sense of self by making someone or something wrong.
It's like our egos thrive on conflict, even if that conflict is only happening in our own head.
Exactly. The ego loves to play the victim or the hero.
Right.
It needs an enemy to feel important. But the truth is, it's all just a mind game.
So how do we break free from this cycle of suffering?
Tolle offers some powerful tools.
Okay.
He suggests that when you notice yourself getting caught up in a negative thought pattern, try these 3 steps.
Okay.
1, become aware of the thought.
Mm-hmm.
Simply notice that you're having the thought without judging yourself for it.
Okay.
2, acknowledge the feeling.
Yeah.
What sensation is this thought creating in your body?
Mm-hmm.
Is it tightness in your chest?
Right.
A knot in your stomach?
Yes.
Tension in your shoulders? Just feel the sensation without labeling it or resisting it.
Okay.
And 3, challenge the thought.
Mm.
Ask yourself, is this thought really true? Is it helpful? Is it serving me in any way?
So it's about becoming a curious observer of our thoughts and feelings rather than getting swept away by them.
Yes. And as we practice this, we start to see that our thoughts are just thoughts.
Okay.
They're not facts. They don't define us.
Right.
And we can choose which thoughts to engage with
Yeah.
and which ones to let go of.
This reminds me of something Tolle talks about in Chapter 8.
Okay.
The power of nature to help us connect with the present moment. He seems to suggest that spending time in nature can be a powerful antidote to suffering.
Absolutely. In nature, everything just is.
Right.
A tree doesn't worry about the future or regret the past.
Right.
It simply exists in the now.
Right.
And when we immerse ourselves in nature, we can tap into that same sense of stillness and peace.
It's like nature's reminding us to let go of all the mental baggage we're carrying around and just be present with what is.
Exactly. And Tolle encourages us to really pay attention to the details of nature,
Okay.
to notice the subtle sounds,
Yeah.
the colors, the textures. He says this goes beyond mere listening or seeing.
Right.
It's about awakening to the sacredness of life itself.
It's like nature is whispering secrets to us if we can just quiet our minds enough to hear them.
I love that image. And Tolle even suggests that it's not just about receiving wisdom from nature,
Okay.
but also about giving back. He says that through our awareness, nature comes to know itself.
So we're not just passive observers of nature.
Right.
We're active participants in its evolution.
That's the idea. We're co-creating a world of beauty, peace, and harmony.
That's beautiful.
And this brings us to another important aspect of Tolle's teachings,
Okay.
the importance of relationships. Join us in part 3 as we dive into how Tolle's principles of stillness, presence, and surrender can transform our interactions with others.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Eckhart Tolle's Stillness Speaks. It's amazing how this book manages to be both deeply profound and surprisingly practical at the same time.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's one of the things I appreciate most about Tolle's work. He doesn't just present these lofty spiritual concepts.
Right.
He offers these real-world tools and practices for applying those concepts to everyday life.
Absolutely. And in the previous parts, we explored some of his most powerful ideas.
Nice.
The importance of stillness, the nature of the ego,
Yeah.
the power of the now, the transformative potential of surrender,
Absolutely.
and even how to approach suffering in a way that can lead to awakening.
It's a lot to take in,
It is.
but it all boils down to this:
Okay.
waking up to the truth of who we are,
Right.
beyond the limitations of our thoughts and egos.
And one of the areas where this awakening can have the most profound impact is in our relationships with others.
Absolutely.
That's what we'll be exploring in this final part of our deep dive.
Because let's be honest, relationships can be both a source of immense joy
Right?
and immense frustration.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah.
They can trigger all sorts of reactions in us,
Sure.
bring up old wounds, and challenge us to grow in ways we never imagined.
And Tolle offers a really unique perspective on how to navigate the complexities of relationships from a place of presence and awareness.
Right.
He dedicates Chapter 9 to this topic,
Okay.
and it's filled with valuable insights.
So what's the key to creating more harmonious and fulfilling relationships, according to Tolle?
Well, he starts by pointing out one of the biggest obstacles to true connection,
Okay.
our tendency to judge and label people.
We all do it right.
Yeah.
We size people up based on first impressions, past experiences, and societal conditioning. We create these mental images of who they are,
Right.
and those images can become a barrier to truly seeing them.
Exactly. We end up relating to our mental projections
Right.
rather than to the actual person in front of us.
Right.
And those projections are often distorted by our own biases,
Yeah.
fears, and insecurities.
It's like we're looking at them through a filter,
Yeah.
and that filter is preventing us from experiencing their true essence.
Precisely. And Tolle suggests that we practice letting go of judgment,
Okay, how do we do that?
not by denying what we see or feel, but by recognizing that behavior is a form of conditioning. In other words, people act the way they do because of their past experiences and
Yeah.
the stories they've created about themselves.
It makes me think about all the times I've gotten upset with someone because they didn't meet my expectations. I was essentially holding them to a standard that I created in my own mind.
And how often does that lead to conflict and resentment? We
Well,
build up these expectations, and when they're not met, we feel disappointed, angry, or even betrayed.
so instead of getting caught up in those reactions, Tolle would say we should try to see the person's behavior as a reflection of their own inner struggles
Mm.
rather than a personal attack on us.
That's the idea. It's about cultivating compassion and understanding,
Right.
recognizing that everyone is doing the best they can with the tools they have.
It's like that saying, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
We often lash out at others because we're hurting inside ourselves.
And Tolle reminds us that when we judge others,
Mhm.
we're ultimately judging ourselves. Because we all share the same human condition.
Mhm.
We're all flawed. We all
Yeah.
make mistakes.
Yeah.
And we all have wounds that need healing.
So instead of focusing on what's wrong with other people,
Yeah.
maybe we should be asking ourselves, what can I learn from this situation? How can I grow from this interaction?
That's a powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah.
And it leads to a more compassionate and understanding way of relating to others.
And speaking of compassion, Tolle talks about the importance of something he calls true listening.
Right.
What's the difference between just hearing what someone's saying
Yeah.
and truly listening to them?
It's a subtle but profound distinction.
Okay.
Hearing is a passive act.
Right.
It's simply taking in sound waves.
Okay.
But true listening is an active and engaged process.
Mhm.
It involves giving your full attention to the other person,
Right.
being present with them in that moment,
Okay.
and creating a space where they feel seen and heard.
It sounds so simple.
Yeah.
But how often do we actually do that? We're often so busy formulating our own responses
Right.
or checking our phones
Yeah.
that we miss out on the nuances of what the other person is trying to communicate.
Exactly. We might be hearing the words,
Right.
but we're not really listening to the emotions,
Right.
the unspoken messages, the energy behind the words.
So true listening is about going beyond the surface level of communication
Yes,
and tapping into a deeper level of connection.
that's a great way to put it. And Tolle offers some practical suggestions
Okay.
for cultivating true listening.
Okay.
He says to start by quieting your own inner dialogue,
Right.
to let go of your own thoughts and agendas,
Mm-hmm.
and to simply be present with the other person.
It's like creating a space of stillness within yourself
Yes.
so that you can fully receive the other person's being.
Beautifully said.
Mm-hmm.
And Tolle also suggests paying attention to your body language.
Okay.
Are you making eye contact?
Mhm.
Are you leaning in?
Right.
Are you sending signals of openness and receptivity?
It's about aligning our inner state with our outer expression so that we're communicating authenticity and presence on all levels.
And here's another fascinating point Tolle makes.
Okay.
He says that true listening is not just about focusing on the other person.
Mm-hmm.
It's also about becoming aware of your own reactions.
So it's about noticing what's happening inside of us as we're listening
Yes.
without judgment or resistance.
Exactly. Are you feeling impatient,
Right.
bored,
Yeah.
defensive,
Mm-hmm.
judgmental?
Right.
Simply noticing those reactions without getting caught up in them can help you stay present
Yeah.
and open to what the other person is sharing.
It's like we're becoming aware of our own inner landscape
Mm-hmm.
as we're navigating the landscape of the relationship.
That's a beautiful analogy.
Thank you.
And as we become more skilled at true listening,
Yeah.
we create a space for deeper connection and understanding to emerge.
It's like we're dropping the masks and the defenses
Yeah.
and allowing ourselves to be seen and known in our vulnerability.
And isn't that what we all long for deep down?
Yes,
To be seen,
Right.
accepted, and loved for who we truly are.
absolutely. And that brings us to another powerful idea that Tolle explores in Chapter 9,
Okay.
the importance of simply being present with each other in stillness.
He suggests that couples try this experiment.
Okay.
Sit together in silence for a period of time
Right.
without feeling the need to fill the space with conversation or activity.
So instead of always needing to talk or do something together,
Right.
we can just enjoy each other's presence in the quiet.
That's the idea. And it might feel awkward or uncomfortable at first.
Right.
But Tolle says that in that space of shared stillness,
Yeah.
a deeper connection can emerge.
It's like we're dropping the roles and the expectations
Mhm.
and just allowing ourselves to be with each other in the raw essence of our being.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in that space of pure presence,
Right.
love can flow more freely.
And maybe that's the key to creating more fulfilling and harmonious relationships.
I think so.
Learning to be comfortable with stillness, both within ourselves and with each other.
It's a beautiful and profound practice. And it all goes back to that core message that Tolle weaves throughout Stillness Speaks,
Right.
the power of awakening to the present moment,
Hmm.
to our true nature,
Right.
and to the interconnectedness of all things.
It's been an incredible journey exploring these ideas with you, and I hope our deep dive into Stillness Speaks has inspired you to bring more stillness presence and awareness into your own life and relationships.
Thanks for having me. It was great to chat about this with you.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive into a world of wisdom and insights.